It all started small. In July 2019, I placed an order for the Novation Circuit, having no idea that it was about to kind of change an important aspect of my life. That being my music creation process and the trajectory of my YouTube channel, which, while not being a full-time gig by any stretch, is an important part of my life. At the time, I had been watching Andrew Huang and Jeremy Blake's fantastic videos with the OP1, and I loved the idea of using a small, portable, standalone hardware device to make electronic music. And also, I had been watching some kind of machine and launchpad finger drumming type videos, and the Circuit seemed like a good way to get into both of those worlds simultaneously. On July 29th, 2017, I created and uploaded my first Novation Circuit jam. I didn't know how it would be received, but I thought it was a cool way to show the music production process while showcasing the music itself at the same time. And while it grew slowly, people did seem to dig it. So I made more Circuit Jam videos and a couple of tutorials, and over time began to fall in love with it. But I still had my eye on the OP1. At the time, I still saw it as kind of the holy grail, and eventually managed to save up some internship money and actually get one. And you know what? I did really like it, especially for working with samples, and I've never really used anything else that has the tape machine workflow that it does. I came to the conclusion after a while of using both devices that the OP1 and the Circuit are pretty different and have complementary feature sets and complementary workflows, and you could just have the two of those together and make albums worth of music, which I have. And I could stop there and be perfectly content. But of course, that was just the beginning of an obsession with Grooveboxes. By now, I was starting to become vaguely aware of the fact that there was a whole world of Grooveboxes out there, with a lot of history and a lot of stuff on the come up, and that was thanks in large part to my growing audience of synth nerds. There's definitely a very special place in my heart for the bedroom EDM producer. That's kind of who my main audience was at the time, and I still make stuff for them because they're kind of my people. But over time, I was becoming more and more involved in the synth YouTube community, and people started recommending other stuff that they thought that I would enjoy trying out. The main one being the Korg Electribe. People said, if you dig the Circuit and if you dig the OP1, you will definitely like this. And I held off for a while. I want to pick and choose my gear carefully and be kind of a minimalist. And at the time, I was somewhat of a broke college student, so being minimalist comes pretty naturally. But eventually, I did cave and get one. Before that, I'd also gotten a PO33 pocket operator, which is the sampler model, and that's definitely a Groovebox, just a really tiny one. And I never fully clicked with it. I think it's a really cool device, and I think if you lean into its lo-fi aesthetic, it can really work. But that one became kind of a footnote in my channel's history. Probably should revisit that at some point. But let's come back to the Electribe, because over time, it's really grown on me. For the first like 24 hours with it, I kind of hated it until I somehow surmounted the learning curve and then realized, wow, this is not so bad. And it's got some unique stuff that I've not really found in any of the other Grooveboxes in this price range. The sound design from scratch capabilities are something that nothing else I own can do other than the OP1, but obviously that's in a completely different price range, and it's a bit of a weirder sound design process anyway. And much like the OP1, you can export individual tracks as WAV files, bring them into your DAW, and mix them. So the Electribe has a very particular sound, but you can definitely shape it in a DAW after the fact. And it is decent for jamming, especially in terms of its MIDI outputs, which I haven't taken full advantage of because my focus is very much on self-contained devices and trying to get massive sounds out of tiny setups, but that is something that's available, and that's something that I very much respect. Over time, the Electribe has really grown on me, so I've made a lot more videos with it as of late. At 3 devices, I absolutely could have stopped there and had enough stuff to make videos about and make plenty of music. And to be clear, I have made a ton of music with all 3 devices, albums worth of material. So I'm not buying gear as a way to compensate for a lack of being able to finish songs. At this point, I'm on a quest. I'm on a quest to find the perfect Groovebox. And spoiler, I don't think I actually have found the perfect Groovebox yet, but also I maybe have, and I'll get to that in a second. But around the time that I was really getting into the Electribe, Roland announced the MC101 and the MC707. And I won't lie, I lusted after the MC101 for quite a while. I finally got one earlier this year, and it's got its own things that make it stand out, but the workflow is definitely clunky. I've griped about it before, so I'm not going to repeat that here. But I will say it's grown on me a lot. There are still quirks of it that annoy me quite a bit and that I find can really bring an inspiring session to a grinding halt. But this thing can sound so friggin' polished. And that brings something that the other devices can't quite get to. The Circuit can definitely get close, and if you do some work in post, OP1 and Electribe tracks can as well. But the 101 has the Roland sound and everything that comes with that. And a lot of people will find that really attractive. And I love the ability it has to record separate tracks via USB while jamming live. That's fantastic. Overall, this thing sounds super clean, and it's one of the tinier devices. It's a bit thicker, but it takes up a lot less space. And I think that's partially to blame for why parts of its workflow are pretty clunky. I've watched some Jeremy Blake from Red Means Recording videos on the MC707, and it made a lot of the quirks of the 101 make a lot more sense when you saw how they kind of had to just take this big device and scale it down to something tiny. And a few major updates to the 101 have not only shown that Roland is committed to making the device the best it can be, but have added stuff like the ability to flip samples, generate random patches, generate arps and chords, and more. I'll do a full video on this eventually, but for now, the added features are making the 101 increasingly powerful and increasingly worth the extra cost. It can't do bass music or live performance nearly as well as the Circuit, but the more I've used the 101 and the more it's been updated, the more I've kind of fallen in love with what it's become and what it can do. And I do love what these devices represent. It represents that companies are getting into the Groovebox game and the DAW-less, self-contained device game. And I think this industry is only going to continue to grow in the next few years, as evidenced by the recent-ish announcement of the Machine Plus. It's definitely out of my price range. Once again, I want to pick and choose my devices, so I'll hold off on it for a while unless Native Instruments wants to send me one. I would appreciate that. But it's great to see the big companies getting into this because they see that as a growing market. More people want this stuff and more companies are getting in on it, so hopefully it'll lead to more innovation and cooler products. You've got the MPC-1, which seems fantastic for hip-hop production and all kinds of advanced sample flipping. You've got the whole Electron line of products, which I'll get back to in a second. And there's the Synthstrom Deluge, which I've had my eye on for quite a while. I currently don't have the money to cough up to get it, but it seems like a cool small company really committed to making this the best device they can possibly make it. I've heard some gripes about the workflow, but this thing seems friggin' powerful, especially for how surprisingly small it looks. So we'll see. But back to Electron, my most recent Groovebox that I've gotten is the model Cycles, which is 6 monophonic tracks of FM, drum, synth, and chord synthesis. And this is a niche device. If I'm on the quest for the best Groovebox, this device is more of a side quest. It's definitely not trying to be better or more modern sounding than the Circuit or the 101, or capable of crazier sound design than the Electribe or the OP1. It's very much trying to be its own thing. A sort of old school device with a modern edge. And for that, it's a lot of fun. It definitely can sound a little dinky if not approached carefully. I'm a bit of a bass head, so obviously I want everything to hit really hard. But if you're going into this to make kind of minimal techno or chill electronica, or just experiment with some kind of percussive or wild FM sounds, it's lovely. Even though I don't know if I'll be able to make albums worth of music with it just because of my own personal tastes in music and how the device works, I've found it incredibly fun and super inspiring, and that made it worth it alone, just for how much fun I've had tinkering with sounds and making little beats with it. There are a lot of other Electron Groovebox-like devices out there, none of which I've had the opportunity to try, yet the Model Cycles is kind of my introduction to the whole Electron world. And I'm enjoying my time here, so we'll see I'm not really planning to go deeper at the moment, but we'll see what the future holds. At this point, the modern Groovebox world is just too big for me to try them all. And once again, I think that's a good thing. I think it's fantastic that there are a lot of different options out there that cater to multiple price points, multiple working styles, multiple kind of styles of music even. It's really cool to see. I will say, if I was to start completely from scratch, I would get a Novation Circuit and a Korg Electribe 2, the synth version. And that would be the core setup. Those two complement each other very well. They work similarly enough to where if you learn one, learning the other won't be too difficult, but also they have very different functionality and sound, which is perfect. Once again, you can make albums worth of music with just these two standalone, relatively small, backpack-fitting devices, and I will continue to. Plus, I'll always keep the OP1 because I'm imagining it's gonna be a little bit of a niche classic, and it is really cool. So I'll hang on to that, but I probably wouldn't buy it now unless you adore its specific workflow and its quirks. If you see those as features rather than bugs, I would say have at it. So in a way, I think I've already found the best Groovebox, at least for me. And I think that's going to be the Novation Circuit, and then add on the Korg Electribe 2 as a close second. These two devices are endlessly inspiring and as close as I'll get for a while to a proper DAW in a box. But at the same time, I'm still searching. There's lots of room to improve in terms of sound quality, in terms of ability to really fine-tune sounds, in terms of handling samples. And at this point, you're probably starting to say, well, Gabe, I think what you want is a DAW and a laptop. But no. I am on a quest for a DAW in a box, and I think that we can continue to get closer to that. I really do, and I'm excited to see where the Groovebox world goes next. I would love to see the workflow and kind of gritty sound design capabilities of the Circuit combined with the on-the-fly sound design capabilities of the Electribe, combined with the polish of the MC101. Bring all that together, and I think you get pretty damn close to the perfect Groovebox. To be clear, I am aware that the one-to-one recreation of a DAW in a box is probably impossible, but I think on our way to that goal, we'll end up with some pretty cool stuff. And also, I do want to be clear that I don't have any problem with DAWs at all. I love them and use them all the time, but I'm also super addicted to the hands-on, performance-based, portable nature of Grooveboxes. So that's my somewhat convoluted journey to find the best Groovebox so far. There's definitely no one answer. There's only the best Groovebox for you, the way you like to work, and what you can or are willing to spend. I've talked about my current favorites, but I'm always open to having a new Groovebox swoop in and become my go-to. Since I'm from a bit of a younger generation of producers, I'm 23 at the time of recording this, I'm only familiar with the new generation of Grooveboxes, so I didn't cover any of the older classics. Whether you've been in the synth and Groovebox game for a while, leave a comment to let me know which Groovebox is your favorite, and if you're entirely new to this whole world, let me know which device seems most appealing to you. Thanks for watching.